This is a response to 2Rocker4U, whose latest video possesses all of the intellectual honesty of a 1950s propaganda film, and is about as effectual as a condom made of sandpaper. The only difference is that a condom made of sandpaper would actually be more comfortable than this piece of incomprehensible drivel. There exists no synonym of the word stupid that can be applied to this video which would not be a horrendous understatement. If ever there is a museum dedicated to benchmarks of feeble-mindedness, this will be the main exhibit. This is a video so completely obtuse that it would insult the intelligence of a termite. If you haven't seen this video, you probably imagine that I am engaging in some sort of hyperbole right now. No, it's really that fucking dumb. Let's get started.
So the first question I'm going to ask is probably one of the most common you hear. Where did life and humanity begin?
Where did life and humanity come from? Well, they came from Earth. Unless some form of panspermia turns out to be true, which I sort of doubt. But I assume you didn't really mean where, you meant how. Well, the origin of life and the origin of man, those are two different questions, really. The primeval stages of life began about 3.8 billion years ago, give or take a few 100 million years. Now, when we're talking about the origin of life, we're talking about protocells, which are cells that are far more primitive than even today's prokaryotes. You know, don't think that there's only one type of single-celled organism. There is huge diversity between single-celled organisms, and these first single-celled organisms were, as you would imagine, the most simplistic. Far more simplistic than anything we see today. They didn't even contain proteins, which are, of course, essential to modern-day cells. Now, these cells were self-replicating, and every once in a while, a cell would replicate itself imperfectly. This is what's known as a mutation. Now, there are three types of mutations, and there are scientific names for them, but I don't remember what the fuck they are. But it doesn't matter because I understand the concept behind them. One sort of mutation is just a benign mutation. It's not a benefit or a detriment to the organism. And then there are, of course, beneficial mutations and detrimental mutations. Now, if an organism possesses a detrimental mutation, it's less likely to survive and less likely to pass its genetic material on to another generation. Whereas an organism with a beneficial mutation is more likely to pass on its genetic information. Now, through this simple and easily understood process, well, I guess it must not be easily understood, through this process, life grew in complexity and diversity, until eventually, 200,000 years ago... Didn't you take a fucking science class? Never mind. 200,000 years ago, the animals known as Homo sapiens emerged on the scene. And here we are. We've made the incredible journey from single-celled organisms to single-brain-celled organisms, like you.
Probably the response I'm going to get is either through evolution or the Big Bang.
Evolution is objectively the correct answer to the question of where human beings came from. As for the question of where life came from, the scientific discipline devoted to that would be called a biogenesis. As for the Big Bang, that's cosmology and has nothing to do with anything, but I really don't feel like explaining that for the 5,223rd time.
But how did the Big Bang come about?
I have two arguments for you, and one of them is genuinely difficult to understand. In fact, it's completely incomprehensible to the human mind, because we're used to existing in a world where we perceive the progression of time. Now, time is ultimately defined by events. A day signifies the rotation of the Earth. A year signifies how long it takes the Earth to travel around the Sun. time is created by our perception of the duration of events. Now, most scientists agree that before the Big Bang, there was no such thing as time. Now, without cause and effect, there is no time, and without time, there is no cause and effect. The answer to the question of what caused the Big Bang is that there was no such thing as cause until the Big Bang. The simple-to-understand argument is what we atheists like to refer to as infinite regression. You want to hold the idea of the Big Bang up to scrutiny by saying, well, what caused this Big Bang? But you never apply that same scrutiny to your God. What caused this God to just exist? You believe that a fully conscious, omnipotent, omniscient being just spontaneously existed. Now, if we're to accept the hypothesis that something could just exist from the very beginning of time, then why not posit that the universe itself in some capacity just existed since the very beginning of time? Why posit a consciousness for which there is no evidence?
Do you agree with Richard Dawkins that there were intelligent life forms on other planets that created us then went away? He said that in the movie Expelled, just if you're wondering where I got that information.
Oh yeah, I remember when he said that. Oh wait, no, he didn't say that. Ben Stein asked Richard Dawkins, is there any circumstance wherein intelligent design is not completely ridiculous? The whole thing was a hypothetical based upon a question that Ben Stein asked him. All he was doing was presenting a naturalistic explanation for the origin of life on Earth that would perhaps adhere to some of the prerequisites of intelligent design. So, in other words, it was a conciliatory gesture on Dawkins' part, but it's certainly not what Dawkins believes, as he explains in the interview that I will link over there. And if you've ever read any of his books pertaining to evolution, it's fairly obvious that Dawkins does not believe that we were created by alien intelligences. You know, and Dawkins even said himself that if we were created by alien intelligences, we would still have to explain their origins, and an evolution would still be the means by which we explained their presence in the universe.
My second question is, are humans of more intrinsic value than animals?
Well, this is a really hard question to answer because intrinsic is a word which deals with objectivity, whereas value is completely subjective. Now, you worded the question poorly, but I'll go ahead and try to answer it anyway. Yes, in my opinion, and it's very important to note in this instance that I am just giving my opinion, human life is of greater importance than animal life.
Humans are capable of speech and are able to make intelligent decisions, but since you base your belief off of whatever you want, why would humans have any more worth than animals?
Precisely because I base my belief on whatever I want. I think intelligence is a better trait than big-ass scary claws or highly refined olfactory sense. The reason I think this is because I possess intelligence and I don't possess claws or a finely tuned olfactory sense. So my belief that human beings are superior is rooted in my human selfishness. But is that in any way objective? No, of course not. This isn't a very interesting argument to make. Let me ask you a question, Two-Rocker, for you. Let's say there is a God. Why would his opinion matter more than anyone else's? I mean, let's say that I draw a shitty little stick figure, and I show it to 100 people, and I say, do you think this is the greatest masterpiece of all time? You know, and all of them say, no, that's just some dumbass, that's just a dumbass stick figure. And I say, you're all wrong. This is the greatest masterpiece of all time. I would know because I created it. The fact of the matter is that just because you create something doesn't make you the ultimate source on it. In fact, our views of our own creations are almost always biased. It's like the parent with the stupid kid who never shuts up about how smart their kid is. We have a bias towards the things we create. Now, God created us in His image, so we can assume that He has the same trait. That God is not objective, that God has opinions. That's the sad truth about your God, is that even if He did exist, His opinions wouldn't be of any more worth than any of His piddling subjects.
The next question is, how do you determine what is moral or immoral, right or wrong? Is there any objective standard or principle? Instinctively, we know not to be cruel. We strive to be friendly to others. How do we have a conscience? Do you believe that whatever a person feels is morally right to that person? Why do we want to do the right thing?
Kindness to strangers is nothing more than the misapplication of an evolutionary algorithm. Evolution implants a directive in our heads that basically says, be nice to other people because then they'll be inclined to be nice to you. It's about reciprocation, you know, quid pro quo, as Hannibal Lecter would say. Early on in humankind's history, pretty much every human that you encountered would be a member of your family or your tribe. So it makes sense for this directive to just apply across the board to anyone you meet. By the way, none of this demeans kindness. Kindness is a good thing because we perceive it as such. We value kindness, therefore kindness has value, because value is generated solely by the human consciousness. Outside of the human consciousness, value is meaningless. There is no such thing as objective value.
My fourth question is, since, in your opinion, nothing happens to you after you die, why do you feel the need to care about what others believe? Why are you so concerned with debating deistic people?
I know that for people like you, it's difficult to move beyond your own selfish motives, and that the only thing that you're used to caring about is your own personal salvation. But once you take a step back and look at the larger picture, you begin to feel a sense of empathy for your fellow man, and to care about the direction that your society is taking. For that reason, I don't want people to live lives of delusion, and I don't want society to be adversely affected by said beliefs. So why do I argue with ignorant little girls like yourself? Well, it's because I care about the human race and the path that it takes. Now, am I wasting my one and only life by arguing with people like you? If I can change one mind, then no, I don't think so.
So my last question is an atheist's lack of experience more compelling than a believer's claim of experience?
Is a child's experience with Santa Claus more compelling than an adult's knowledge that there is no Santa Claus? Is mythology more compelling than empirical evidence and reason? To Rocker for you, I'm sure that you're a nice girl. I'm sure that you have good friends who you like and trust, and I'm sure that you do the right thing in most circumstances. But you are completely ignorant about the things you're talking about. I have no doubt that there exist topics that you know more about than I do, hands down. And those are the topics you should be talking about. These topics, however, you know nothing about. What you need to do, the next time you feel yourself wanting to talk about something of which you are completely ignorant, is just shut the fuck up. And if you're really just determined to talk about this stuff, I'm going to recommend some videos to you, and I'm going to put the links over there in the sidebar, and I want you to just check them out, and to watch them, and to watch them with an open mind, and to try to actually comprehend the position that you're trying to combat. I never want to see you making these sort of idiotic mistakes again. I don't want to see you talking about the Big Bang as though it has something to do with evolution. Alright, 2 Rocker for you. That's all I gotta say. Peace. Def Hook. Out.